Revealed, the haunted farm in Ontario with 7 sinister rules you must never break. The sun dripped low over Ontario, California, as Sarah, clutching the hands of her children, stepped onto the farm's vibrant grounds. Laughter erupted around them, blood-curdling joy intermingling with a warning, the whispers of the locals. Ghost stories sent shivers down her spine, families vanished, swallowed by the farm's mysteries. The 7 sinister rules danced in her mind like a dark fog. She pushed those thoughts aside and offered a smile to Ben and Lily, convinced today would be different. As they settled down with massive bowls of homemade ice cream, the sweet aroma mingled with something rotten lurking beneath the surface. Children darted around dressed as ghouls, every giggle tinged with a hint of something unsettling, and Sarah could feel her skin crawl. She'd barely taken a bite when the words of a farm worker echoed in her ears, vibrating like a haunted bell, "Never break the rules or else." At first, as they ventured to the hayrides and face painting, her worries melted. Ben's laughter surged in the crisp air, while Lily twirled, her fairy wings flickering like flames of joy. But then, as the sun dipped behind the horizon, darkness clawed at the edges of their world. The once merry crowd morphed, smiles twisted grotesquely, shadows grew longer and menacing, whispering warnings that set her heart racing. Then came the scream, a chilling, piercing cry that shattered the night. Sarah's stomach churned as a boy in a superhero costume was swallowed whole, as if the ground itself had opened up to devour him. Panic surged. She pulled her children closer, the warmth of their small hands fading into ice against the heavy anticipation that draped the festival. Whispers flitted through the air like bats, families slipping away, victims of the farm's dark allure. In a moment of weakness, they broke the first rule: do not enter the barn after sunset. A strange noise lured them in. The barn doors creaked open, and dread knotted in Sarah's gut. Inside, the atmosphere turned thick with despair, old photographs lining the walls depicting smiling families' long-gone faces dipped in shadows of horror. "Mommy, I don't like this," Lily whimpered as the doors slammed shut behind them. Sarah's heart raced, those same whispers grew deafening, shouting one rule leads to another. Her pleas fell muted, echoes swallowed by the looming night. The lights flickered, and twisted shadows seemed alive, eager. As desperation clawed at her throat, she began to understand the grim reality. Every laugh of her children counted against them. They were not only visitors, they were potential sacrifices, nothing more than dark offerings. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that is happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The barn seemed to close in on them. As Sarah banged on the door, her heart pounded. The growing darkness seeped into her veins. Around her, shadows began to take shapes, grotesque figures grinning, longing to add them to their collection of lost souls. Every instinct screamed for her to escape, yet there was nowhere to go. Suddenly, a gust of wind rushed through, whispering the last of the 7 rules. Do not ignore the signs. Will they unravel the truth behind the farm's sinister past, or will they become the next lost family, locked away forever in this haunted realm? As shadows danced, an invisible terror promised a nightmarish fate. What would happen next? The air inside the barn thickened, suffocating Sarah as she heard the clicking of hooves on the wooden floor, a sound that didn't seem to belong. Every tick of the clock reverberated with agony, each echo a reminder of their frantic situation. Shadows twisted and coiled, dark tendrils creeping towards her and her children like hungry serpents. "Mommy!" Lily's voice trembled, little hands clutching at Sarah's skirt as if it could shield them from the encroaching terror. Sarah's mind raced. The signs? What signs? She couldn't recall what ignoring the signs could possibly mean. "SSH will find a way out," she whispered, forcing calm into her trembling voice, but doubt curled cold around her heart. As the whispers escalated into a horrific cacophony, scrambling for clarity, Sarah spotted a barely visible outline in the corner. A figure, hazy and indistinct, flickered like an old film. It bore the semblance of a woman, her face a mask of anguish, mouth open in a silent scream that broke Sarah's heart. She wanted to run, but found herself rooted to the spot, compelled to look closer. "Do not take the picture." The shadow wailed, her voice a hollow echo that reverberated through the barn. "They will come for you, the shadows will demand to be fed." The warning cascaded over Sarah like a cold wave, churning her stomach. Was she madness? "Mommy, I'm scared." Ben's voice broke through her thoughts, pulling her back from the depths of dread. His eyes were wide, bright with fear that mirrored her own. "Let's keep searching for a way out. We just need to." A sudden, jarring slam made her jump. The barn door had slammed shut, sealing their fate inside as if the farm itself had decided they were staying for good. Panic rippled through her body, pulling at her sanity as Emily's breath quickened. Then they heard a soft thumping noise, like feet dragging across the barn's floor. It grew louder, rhythmic, almost hypnotic. "Get behind me," Sarah commanded, summoning every ounce of protective instinct. They huddled close, the warmth of their bodies a fragile solace against the waiting terror. The thumping coalesced into shadowy figures, their forms emerging from the corners of the barn. Muffled whispers turned into aching wails, forming what sounded like a chorus of grief-lost families, perhaps, echoing their despair. Suddenly, one of the figures lunged forward, revealing its ghastly face, a twisted mask of humanity with hollow eyes that seemed to reach deep into her soul. Energy drained from Sarah, leaving her cold as ice. "Feed us," it hissed, voice rasping. "You must play the game to survive. Our hunger grows or they will take you." "Take us where?" She breathed, fear tightening her throat, but the creature merely grinned, a terrifying curl of its lips revealing sharp teeth that dripped with darkness. Behind it, other shadows stirred, murmuring eagerly just beyond the edge of the dim light. Then, through the thickening dread, a vision of the photos lining the barn walls filled her mind. Smiling families trapped within the confines of the frames, their laughter frozen in time, panic stretching in their eyes. "Somewhere you won't escape," the figure whispered, hunger playing in its gaze. Sweat trickled down Sarah's back, urgency blooming in her chest. One thought solidified: if they wanted to survive, they had to break another rule. "Lily, hold on tight." She grabbed Ben's hand, pulling her children with her as she made a move for the back of the barn. But when they turned to escape, the figures surged forward, blocking their path. The cold air turned slick with foreboding, every heartbeat echoing the word, "Rules, rules, rules." Time blurred, seconds slipping away as they crossed into darkness. And the shadows closed in. Would they spiral deeper into the abyss, or was a glimmer of hope still flickering? All she could do was pray for dawn, as she stepped into the unknown. What would they find on the other side? Their chances of survival hung precariously, and the next rule awaited them. The darkness wrapped around them like a heavy shroud, each breath slipping through Sarah's lips like a whispered promise of despair. She could barely see, but she felt the shadows thick and palpable, crawling, advancing, always hungry. "Stay close, don't let go," she instructed, her voice steadier than her heart. Emily whimpered softly, sensing the terror, while Ben squeezed her hand tightly. The barn felt alive, creaking and groaning as if it were in pain. Sarah risked a glance over her shoulder, the eyes of the figures peering through the haze, their features still obscured but undeniably present. The close proximity of their whispers sent chills down her spine, sharp reminders of the warning: they will demand to be fed. The children shifted uneasily, drawing in close as the shadows thickened further, smothering any hope of escape. Chilled reflections of their own faces appeared against the wood framework, a cruel imitation of innocence tarnished by fear. How had they ended up here? Mommy Lily's voice trembled like a delicate thread, on the verge of snapping. Sarah hushed, though her own panic clawed at her throat. Time was evaporating. She turned, scanning the barn for anything that might help them. Her eyes caught the glint of something metallic in the faint light. An old pitchfork, rusted but sturdy, leaned against the wall like a forgotten sentinel. "Where do we go?" Ben asked, voice quivering, hand steadying herself, Sarah made a quick, desperate decision. We need to lure them away. If they want a game, let us play. Play. That's not good. Lily cried, voice rising with fear. Just trust me. She snapped. The adrenaline surged through her. Ben grabbed the pitchfork. The shadows stirred. Hunger undulated in the air, thick and intoxicating. Sarah's pulse raced as she handed the pitchfork to him. The moment felt monumental. At the same time, she felt the weight of inevitability as the figures began closing in. Hey! Sarah yelled, her voice echoing across the barn. You want food? Come and get it. For an instant, there was silence. Then, a ripple of movement swept through the shadows and eager anticipation buzzing in the air. The creatures converged, their ghastly forms shifting in a macabre dance. Ben, now! Sarah shouted, with all his might. Ben thrust the pitchfork forward, aiming at the closest shadow. It screamed a shrill noise that reverberated through the barn like nails on a chalkboard. Darkness rippled as the thing recoiled, momentarily disrupted. Run! Sarah barked, pulling Lily with her as she dashed towards the back of the barn. The children followed, heartbeats racing, fear propelling them like a current, but just as they neared an unkempt window, a figure surged forward, blocking their escape. Sarah stumbled, frozen in terror as the piercing eyes of the creature bore into her soul. An insatiable hunger glowed behind the shadows. Playtime is over, it hissed, words mingling with the whispers of the rest, drowning Sarah in a wave of impending doom. The pitchfork unsettled in Ben's hands, uncertainty flooding his eyes. They were cornered, and more shadows coalesced, looming large, closing in like a vice. Desperation bloomed in Sarah's throat. We have to split up. No. Mom! Emily cried, tears spilling down her cheeks, but the darkness pressed in, drowning out the light of their concern. An all-consuming dread enveloped them, each heartbeat a step closer to the edge. Even shadows can't exist in daylight, Sarah shouted, recalling the whisper from the vague warnings etched within her memory. We need to stay together. There must be a way to banish them. The figure in front of them melted back into the shadows, its ghastly grin stretching impossibly wide. Dawn will never come for you. With that chilling declaration, the floor beneath them seemed to tremble, the barn quaking as an unseen force shook the very foundation of their resolve. Mommy! Lily screamed as Sarah's heart sank deeper into the darkness, fear gnawing at her mind. Could they find the truth before it consumed them? The shadows thickened, and Sarah's blood ran cold. What more darkness lay hidden within their insidious grip? Without options left, she pulled her children close, whispering words of comfort mingled with the rising tide of dread. What had they truly awakened, and would dawn ever come? As darkness pressed down around them, hope flickered tenuously like a dying candle. But in moments of terror, sometimes recklessness was the only choice left. And the next rule awaited them, just beyond their grasp. The shadows lurched, pulsating like a heartbeat around them. Sarah tightened her grip on her children, their small bodies trembling against her. The air was thick with a stench she couldn't place something rotten, something alive and waiting. The whispering grew louder, a cacophony that wrapped around their minds, probing for weaknesses. Mom, what do we do? Ben's voice barely broke through her mounting dread, but she could feel the questions pressing against him like weight. Stay quiet, Sarah whispered back, her words barely escaping her cracked lips. She strained to listen to the rustling in the darkness, to discern any plan from the madness overtaking her thoughts. A surge of wind breezed through the barn, swift and cold, a harsh reminder of the world beyond the rotting walls. The creatures in the shadows paused. She sensed a shift. Maybe they didn't want to play after all. She was about to suggest they head deeper into the barn when sudden frantic rustling came from a far corner, something moving too fast and too low to be human. Get behind me! She ordered, pushing the children back. They obeyed, fear clinging to them like a second skin. Ben grasped the pitchfork, eyes darting nervously. The shadows flared, shapes recoiling for a moment before reforming, the whispering escalating to a fever pitch. Sarah's breath hitched as a figure melted into the faint shimmer of moonlight, its form elongated and as twisted as it was horrific. A spine-chilling grin sprawled across its face, glistening with venomous delight. "More games," it crooned, voice sinuous and smooth, dripping with malice. "Please," Sarah begged, heart hammering against her ribs. "We didn't mean to disturb you. We just want to leave." The creature tilted its head, eyes narrowing, as the others crept closer, their movement fluid and eerie. "Leave? Oh no, sweet Sarah. You see, you don't get to leave once you play." Lily's sobs echoed in the barn, shrill and haunting. "Mommy, I'm scared. Remember what I said to keep together," Sarah choked out, trying to find strength in her own words. But the shadows thrummed with a desperation that fell over her like a storm. She caught a glimpse of movement in the corner of her eye. Was that an exit? "Look!" she shouted, pointing towards a faint glimmer of light, flickering like a dying ember. "A way out." Instinct kicked in. "Run!" she urged, grasping Lily's hand while pushing Ben forward with the pitchfork as their shield. The shadow creatures froze for a fleeting moment, reacting like predators caught off guard. The children bolted. But Sarah lingered, torn between raw instinct and the dread that threatened to consume them. She had to give them a chance. Then, it all exploded around them. A screech ripped through the barn, reverberating through her bones. Shadows lunged forward. Sarah felt a sharp pain in her arm as a clawed hand grazed her skin, but she pressed on. The glowing light grew brighter, swathing them in its unexpected warmth. Suddenly, she was across the threshold, arms pulling her, weightless and desperate. Sarah fell into the light with her children, breathless, adrenaline rushing, but as they stumbled forward, that moment of safety tore at the seams. The barn door vanished in a cloud of smoke, shadows pouring in from every direction, suffocating the light. "Welcome to your new game," the voice hissed, echoing eerily as Sarah's heart sank. They were trapped, surrounded by darkness that pulsed with life. The sinister rules of the game loomed heavy in the air, each heartbeat a reminder of what they had awakened. "Mommy." Lily's voice trembled as she clung tightly to her sister. There was no way out. The shadows circled closer, ready to consume them whole. Each second ticked by, heavy and agonizing. Then, from the darkness, a chilling whisper beckoned, "You can play, but you must feed one of your own." Frozen in fear, Sarah's blood ran cold. What horrific choice lay ahead? Could love survive horror, or would the greediest dark claim their innocence forever? The whispers curled around them, dark and sticky, wrapping tighter with each passing second. Sarah's heartbeat surged like a jackhammer in her chest, drowning out the muted cries of her children. They were trapped in a nightmare, the shadows swelling with a hunger she couldn't comprehend. "Mommy, don't let them take me," Ben pleaded, his voice breaking, the pitchfork trembling in his small hands. "They want a piece of us," Sarah said, instinctively pulling the children closer. Every instinct told her to fight, to scream, but her mind raced for a loophole, a shred of an escape. The creature's sickly sweet laughter echoed, sending icy fingers down her spine. "Feed someone, feed your own," it echoed, taunting. A sick game of survival. Sarah gulped, trying to mask the betrayal coiling within her. In this ghastly arena, the true horror lurked beneath the layers. How could she choose? Suddenly, the shadows flared brightly, stretching and curling with sinister intent. A dozen eyes opened, twinkling with malice, surveying them like prey. The barn seemed alive, each board creaking with sinister glee as its wooden lips whispered their fate. The air turned electric, buzzing with their malevolent anticipation. Lily whimpered, eyeing the shadows as if they were forming into grotesque silhouettes from her worst fears. "Mommy, I don't want to play." "Neither do I," Sarah whispered fiercely. But even in her defiance, reality pressed mercilessly against her. The monsters were right, they would never leave without a price. "Mom," Ben's voice trembled again, catching her attention. He seemed to be contemplating the impossible, his brow furrowing. What if it was just one of us? Just one to save the rest? The suggestion landed like lead in Sarah's stomach. She couldn't fathom what he was implying. No. We won't do that. We won't hurt each other. But we can't stay here. Look. Ben gestured wildly, eyes wide with terror as the creatures shifted, shadows thickening ever closer. The laughter roared, a cacophony of gleeful chaos. Desperation clawed at Sarah's mind. Would it come down to this sacrifice? The love she'd fought so hard to protect shattered against the reality of their circumstances. I could push you guys out, Ben said, his resolve firming like steel. I could distract them. Panic surged through her. You don't understand what you're saying. You can't take that risk, Ben. But he was staring past her, locked in a gaze that pierced her heart. Mom, think about it. If we don't do something, we could all end up lost forever. Children, the voice crooned, curling into their ears, an alluring promise laced with dread. Time is running out. What will it be? Your love or your lives? The tension surged, the shadows pressing in on them, their sinister forms twisting and writhing. The laughter crescendoed, filling the barn with a ripe sense of dread. Would they be the next playthings in a dark game of fate? With a deep breath, Sarah weighed the impossible choice in her heart. Each second felt like a lifetime, and the question lingered heavy in the air, who would she choose to sacrifice? What if it led to salvation or doom? What is the price we must pay? Sarah whispered, eyes wide, realizing the weight of her own desperation as she felt the darkness encircle them. Waiting for her answer. Was it already too late? In the silence that followed, a cry echoed through the barn, one that sent her thoughts spiraling downward, a cry that felt too familiar. Mom! A voice, but not from the children beside her. It came from the shadows, a pitiful wail that echoed with their name. Lily? Sarah spun wildly, dread gnawing at her insides. No. But the shadows pulled tighter, wrapping around their feet like chains, taunting their every move. Who will it be, Sarah? A voice slithered from the dark, relishing her torment. Was she prepared to pay with the innocence of her own? And then, in the underlying chaos of it all, a realization struck her. Perhaps the shadows had anticipated this question all along. As a chilling laugh filled the dark, she knew the next move would shatter everything. The shadows quivered as if grinning, mocking her awareness. Your choice, dear Sarah. Time is slipping away, the whispering voice dripped with venomous delight, curling around her thoughts like smoke. Silence filled the barn, dripping with an eerie stillness that made her skin prickle. Stop it. Just stop. Sarah shouted, panic igniting her voice. She pushed Ben and Lily behind her, the image of their innocence feeding the fire of her desperation. You can't do this to us. But the shadows only tightened their grip, pulling each breath from her lungs, suffocating her spirit. They flared, and she saw visions in the dark, twisting bodies, anguished faces, and eyes wide with fear as they disappeared into nothingness. Her heart raced. They were all imprisoned within a sick theater, playing the roles of puppet and spectator alike. Mommy, I'm scared. Ben cried, clutching onto her leg. His small frame trembled, the pitchfork slipping from his grasp, falling into the shadows with a soft thud. Listen to me. We'll find a way. She said, but her voice wavered. Each word tasted of ash on her tongue. Tendrils of darkness wrapped around her children, and for a moment, she felt a sickening urge to push them away. To save herself, to save them. The illusion of protection slipped through her fingers like sand, the air hummed. Choose quickly, dear Sarah, the voice sang with an insidious lilt. Love has its price and so does life. She turned to Ben, his eyes wide with fear, pleading. You don't have to sacrifice anything. We're going to get out of here. Mom, what if his words crashed together, throwing Sarah into a whirlpool of despair? What if it really is us against them? Maybe it's the only way. What if no? Sarah snapped, fury and fear colliding. Her hand ran through her hair, nodding with anguish. This couldn't be happening. She couldn't allow her son to entertain such madness. Yet deep within, something flickered, a shadow of doubt, a glimmer of resignation that made her stomach churn. A sudden shift in the air drew her eyes towards the far wall. Along the wooden beams, flickers of movement darted, and the twisted shadows morphed, pulling back to reveal faces. Echoes of the lost, mouths open in terrified screams, their eyes hollow and pleading, yearning for escape. "Mommy?" Lily whimpered, her small fingers clutching Sarah's arm. "They look like they need help. They're just tricks. Just lies." Sarah seethed, her heart thudding painfully in her chest. But a flicker of recognition pulsed within. They were once like her, trapped and desperate, lost in a nightmare of choices. And then she saw it, a glint of hope beneath the writhing mass. A weak light flickered beyond the constricting shadows. Could it be a window? A way out? Her instincts screamed at her to run, to clutch her children and flee towards the light, yet the shadows yanked at her, their laughter mixing with the fading cries of the damned that hung heavy in the air. "Mom!" "The light!" Ben shouted, pointing. "Hold my hand, all of you!" Sarah commanded, gathering her strength, determined to fight against the pull of the dark. The laughter grew louder, chaos erupting as she took a step toward the glimmering hope, dragging her children behind her. But as they moved closer, the shadows swirled violently, hissing and coiling as if sensing their intention. "Flee now, and pay the price later," the voice slithered, thick with malice. "It makes no difference, dear Sarah. Once you cross that threshold, the real game will begin." With heart racing, they bolted towards the light, the very air behind them crackling with maleficence. Faces turned to screams, those once lost now clinging to her with pleading hands, reaching, always reaching. "Run!" she urged, fear slicing through her resolve as she felt the whispering darkness at her back, ready to pull them under. And as the light drew closer, Sarah's mind filled with one last thought, a dreadful certainty that perhaps crossing into that light would not bring freedom but bind them tighter to a fate even worse than the shadows lurking behind. What awaited them on the other side that might be worse than what now pursued? The light glimmered like a distant star, shimmering with an ethereal glow against the oppressive quagmire of darkness that grasped at their heels. Sarah clutched her children, their tiny hands trembling in hers, a last bastion of warmth against the encroaching chill. With every step forward, the barn seemed to twist, the wooden beams groaning and creaking as if protesting their escape. "Faster!" Sarah cried, adrenaline surging through her veins. The laughter echoing from the shadows became a cacophony, a derisive chorus that promised torment should they falter. As they neared the shimmering beacon, the air thickened, drawing a deep, desperate gasp from Sarah's lungs. Suddenly, the shadows lunged, snatching at her legs with icy fingers, whispering stolen secrets that scraped at her mind. "What will you choose? Save them or save yourself?" The malicious tones slithered around her thoughts, slick and merciless. "Mommy!" Ben cried, fear cracking his voice as he stumbled, nearly losing his grip on her. "Hold on to me." She pulled them in closer, heart racing, as the darkness curled closer, trying to snatch them back into its hell. Their little bodies felt fragile under her grasp. Each heartbeat thundered in her ears, drowning out the malicious hissing of the shadows. For a moment, the light flickered in her vision, an almost tangible entity beckoning her. It pulsed steadily, a heartbeat separate from her own. Her instincts screamed that it was a trap, a ruse, but this was a gamble, the only way out. "We're almost there," she yelled, willing her legs to move faster, her muscles protesting under the strain. "Mom!" Lily squeaked, looking back at the grasping dark. "What if it's bad? Trust me." Sarah shot back, panic rising like bile in her throat. "It's better than this." But as they neared the light, time warped, stretching and twisting. The shadows, sensing their desperation, unleashed a torrent of howling sound, screams echoing with grief, despair, and rage, a symphony of lost souls clawing for release. In that moment, Sarah felt something shift inside. A sliver of understanding slipped through the fog of fear. They're not here to help. They want to drag us down. She locked her eyes on the glow ahead. With every ounce of strength, she sprinted, her breath ragged. The shadows clawed at them, snatching at her clothes, her hair, seeking to tear them apart. Just a few strides more then, her foot broke free of the last grasping shadow, colliding into the warm light. Blinding, enveloping. But instead of bliss, shock rippled through her. The light was hollow, and in an instant, a dark void swallowed her, her children, and the once familiar world they knew. They fell through nothingness, spiraling downward into a chasm of swirling chaos. No ground beneath them, just an endless descent. The frantic screaming of her children felt muffled, the world around them distorted. The shadows pursued, writhing just out of reach, their laughter ringing hollow. "Welcome, dear Sarah." Fingers raked her arms, icy breath curled around her neck, wrapping tightly. It felt familiar, yet fear bubbled up uncontrollably. "Where are we?" She gasped, but the words suffocated in her throat. The void splintered, and suddenly they landed hard on a cold, damp surface. Unfurling in panic, Sarah took in their surroundings, a dilapidated room, grungy and filled with rusted objects. Images of forgotten memories hung limply on the walls, gnawed by time. Shadows slinked along the corners, whispering revelations and promises of despair. "Mom." Ben's voice trembled, fear cracking his innocence. She turned, a sinking dread settling in her stomach. "We need to get up. We need to keep moving." The room leaned closer, shadows becoming figures, indistinct shapes barely there but watching her. "Have you come to play, Sarah?" A voice purred, sweet and sinister. "The real game begins now." As her heart raced, a thought clawed at her mind. This was no escape. This was only the beginning of a far darker nightmare. What new horrors awaited them now, in this unholy embrace of shadows and despair? And within that darkness, she could feel the cold, resonating laughter echo as they encircled them once more. The room shivered with an energy that felt alive. Shadows flickered, slowly congealing into more defined shapes that twisted and coiled along the walls. They whispered secrets that wormed their way into Sarah's mind, a slow invasion, creeping dread that clawed at her sanity. Her children huddled against her leg, the warmth of their small bodies a fragile barrier against the cold tendrils of fear wrapping around her heart. "Mommy." Ben's voice cracked. The desperation in his tone sent a spike of terror through her. "Stay close," she instructed, forcing calmness into her words. But her own pulse thundered violently in her ears, drowning out the ambient whispers. "Did you like the light?" The voice echoed again, echoing through the space like a sinister lullaby, each word laced with venom. "You thought it would save you, didn't you? But it only led you here to us." Sarah swallowed hard. "Who are you?" she gasped, trying to project strength despite the raw fear tightening its grip around her throat. The shadows laughed, a collective, eerie sound that reverberated through the air. "We are the keepers of shadows. Those who've crossed the boundary, like you." A figure materialized, its face obscured in darkness, yet its smile was unmistakably malicious. "You are ours now." Panic flooded her veins. "No. I want to let you take my children." She could feel the heat of her rage as an unyielding force, her instinct to protect rising above the choking fear. "We don't want them," the figure continued, its voice slithering like smoke. "We just want to play." Before she could respond, shadows surged forward, twisting into mock forms of loved ones lost. They whispered secrets, twisted memories like knives, taunting her. "Do you remember your father? How he failed you? Get away!" Sarah shouted, shoving the memories away, their coldness burning. She stepped backward, her heart pounding as she urged the kids to move. "Mommy, where do we go?" Lily whimpered, her wide eyes glistening with unshed tears. Just follow me." Sarah turned, making her way through the room, desperately searching for a way out. The air was thick, suffocating. Each step felt like wading through mud, the shadows inching closer, filling the space with muffled cries and eerie laughter, a nightmarish symphony that threatened to drown her. She reached for the door, a weathered slab of wood that seemed almost alive, pulsating under her touch. It creaked open with a prolonged moan, revealing a dark corridor that stretched beyond. With a twisted intestate, the shadows in the room swirled violently, ready to pounce as she pushed her children through. "Run!" she screamed, and they flew into the corridor, the darkness swallowing them whole. It felt like being submerged underwater, the sounds of the world above fading as they raced through an expanse that seemed to go on forever. But the corridor soon shifted, elongating in ways that defied reality. Sarah felt the walls close in, the air prickling with whispers that spoke of despair and torment. They were trapped in the realm of shadows, and nowhere felt safe. "Why do you resist?" The shadowy specters breathed, their hissing echoing against the cold stone walls. "Your fears are our playground. Embrace them." Suddenly, a whisper pierced through the cacophony, just audible enough to draw Sarah's attention. It carried a familiar voice, softer than the rest. "Help us break free." She skidded to a halt, eyes wide. Was it a trick? Were they luring her closer, or was this a chance to escape? Running on pure instinct, she pushed forward, the voice drawing her deeper into the gloom. "Who are you?" she shouted, her voice echoing back, uncertain and frantic. But the answer came as a chilling laugh. "Just another lost soul like you." Ben clung to her waist, trembling harder now, the cold encroaching. "Mom, please. I'm scared." "I know, baby. I know," Sarah whispered, fear clawing at her heart. "We have to find a way out." Together, and the shadows danced, ready to pounce at any moment, but somewhere deep within, Sarah's determination flared again. If there was a voice calling for help, then maybe, just maybe, this nightmare wasn't over yet. But as they continued deeper into the darkness, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was about more than just survival. They weren't merely trapped, they were part of a twisted game where the stakes were higher than they could imagine, and with each step they took, the laughter grew louder, too inviting to ignore. What choice would she have to make in this malevolent game? The darkness closed in on them, thick as molasses, and Sarah could barely see the outlines of her children next to her. Lily's tiny hand slipped from her grip, and an icy jolt shot through Sarah's spine. "Lily!" Panic surged, drowning out the whispers that swirled like a tempest. Sarah turned, heart racing, her eyes striving to pierce the obsidian veil. "Mom!" Lily cried out, the fear in her voice striking deeper than any knife. Sarah lunged forward, her pulse roaring in her ears. The corridor seemed to twist beneath her feet, ever shifting, as if it were alive and mocking her attempts to reach her daughter. She found Lily, clutching her own little arms as if to chase away a phantom that wouldn't come. "Don't let go of me. We have to stick together." Sarah clutched both of her children close. The shadows pressed against them, and her breath quickened as the whispers escalated into a chorus of mocking laughter, surrounding them, suffocating. "You think you can escape?" A voice hissed through the cacophony, low and palpable. "It's so much more fun if you play along." The twisted figures leered at them from the corners, flickering in and out of existence, their eyes glinting like shards of glass in the murk. "Mom, what do we do?" Ben's voice broke. His small frame shook against her, his eyes wide, cheeks wet. "Just keep moving. Don't look back." But every step felt heavier than the last, as if the shadows were wrapping themselves around her ankles, siphoning her strength. The walls pulsed with something sinister, their surfaces shifting like a heartbeat. With a sudden rush of determination, Sarah pressed ahead. "Whatever they want, we won't give it to them. We're not afraid." As if responding to her declaration, the corridor twisted violently, throwing them into darkness. Suddenly, they were in a new room. The air was slightly warmer here, buzzing with an unsettling energy. A circular chamber, lined with mirrors that captured flickers of movement, but not her reflection, only shadowy echoes of her children, their faces warped and grotesque. "They're playing tricks on us," she gasped. The mirrors seemed to mock her, distorting the reality of her fears. "Stay close, please." Each reflection held a different version of her, tired, broken, a shallow specter of the mother she had once been. The laughter returned, more insidious now, as if it fed off her despair. "Look at you, dear Sarah. Alone. Pathetic," one shadow crooned from the depths of a mirror. "This is who you are, who you always will be." An urge to scream bubbled up inside her, but she fought it back. She couldn't give in. "We have to break free." She snatched Ben and Lily's hands, pulling them away from the mocking images. "Focus on me. Hold on to me." But as she turned to leave, Ben's foot caught on something, an unseen root stretching from the shadows. He tumbled to the ground, helpless. "Mom! I can't, Ben." Time seemed to slow as Sarah reached down, desperation clawing at her throat. The laughter crescendoed, echoing off the mirrored walls. "It's too late." They sneered, gleeful at her agony. Tears flowed freely down Ben's cheeks as he clutched at the darkness, whispering a single word, "Help no." The word burst from her lips, a raw scream against the encroaching fears. But the walls of the chamber creaked and groaned, shadows thickened, shifting closer. In the deepest corner of her mind, she felt it, a flicker of hope, the echo of the voice that had earlier called out for help. "You're not alone," but who had said that? And could it be possible in this twisted realm? But just as quickly, doubt flooded in, drowning her resolve. The lights in the mirrors flickered, and the laughter transformed into chilling howls. Something deep inside her warned, she was being hunted. They were. But by what? "Mommy!" Lily's terrified exclamation shattered her thoughts. Sarah turned to find the shadows coiling towards her children, a malevolent force rising to claim what it deemed its own. "Run!" Sarah shouted, shoving them towards the door wherever it may lead. "We'll find a way. We have to." But just as they bolted, the ground shuddered beneath them. A part of her felt that a reckoning was coming. A moment that could change everything, yet, in that split second of decision, a chill ran through her. The darkness surely held a price, but what if the cost was more than she could pay? And just as she stood poised on the edge of despair, the laughter surged again, ringing in her ears, drowning out the world. What happens now? What darkness awaited them beyond the door? Would they ever escape the shadow's clutches? The shadows swirled, pulsing with a dark hunger that seemed to resonate through Sarah's very bones. Time stretched, making every heartbeat echo like a thunderclap in the thickening silence. Sarah felt the weight of her children's fear pressing against her. There was no way to win their freedom without risking everything. "Mommy, help!" Ben shouted, scrambling to his feet, his eyes wide with terror. The pit of despair in Sarah's stomach twisted painfully. She could feel the suffocating reality of their situation crushing her spirit. The shadows, alive and eager, eyed her children like prey. "Stay close!" she yelled, gritting her teeth as she pulled them against her. "We have to keep moving." They dashed forward into the literal darkness, the shadows trailing uncertainly behind, their whispers rustling like leaves in the wind. Sharp angles of dread skittered around her, but somehow she pressed on. She had to. For them. In a flash of movement, her heart racing, Sarah glimpsed a door at the end of the corridor. Its wood appeared warped, twisted, but it shimmered faintly with hope. "There. We can make it." The shadows surged, a collective lurch toward the light. Sarah instinctively pulled Ben and Lily closer. "Don't look back," she urged them. The laughter intensified, a cacophony of panic, lost cries, and unfulfilled dreams. Yet somewhere amid their chaos, anger flickered within her, a smoldering flame she refused to extinguish. "Let us go!" she screamed defiantly, channeling the raw energy of her love. "You think you can control us? You are nothing. The shadows paused, as if her words surfed on the edge of haunting laughter. In that moment of shock, she seized the opportunity. Run! With quickened feet, they lunged towards that distant door, the wood splintering in her grasp as she threw it open. The blinding light enveloped them like a blanket, warm, welcoming, alive. They stumbled forward, the shadows clawing and muttering threats as they were forced back by the luminescence. For a split second, Sarah felt hope swell in her chest. They'd broken through the darkness, escaped the farm's grasp, but fate had its own plans. The light flickered violently, dimming, and suddenly, they were back inside the barn. The shadows returned, circling like hawks ready to swoop down. The children whimpered, pressing against her side. No. Sarah's voice broke with despair, but then, amidst the tumult, she felt something shift. She looked down at her children's terrified faces, their spirits hadn't faltered. The last remnants of despair coiled in her heart and morphed into something fierce. Enough games! She cried out, architect of her own fate. She thrust her hands forward, and with every ounce of power she possessed, she unleashed a flood of light from deep within. Let us go. You can't have us. The words ignited, blazing like wildfire. The shadows hissed and shrieked, recoiling from the brilliance that surged forth. Free themselves, create their own reality. The darkness buzzed, twisting, yearning for flesh and fear. Yet, Sarah focused, her mind racing. Remember those lost. Remember love. The shadows faltered, uncertain. Memories, faces forgotten, laughter flooded the barn, fleeting, a reminder of what was lost, but what could be reclaimed. We will not play your games. The barn let out an ominous groan, and the ground trembled. Light pushed against the dark in radiating waves. The phantom figures, screaming, distorting, began to dissolve into mere shadows of air. Mommy! Lily cried, arms reaching. We're leaving. Sarah shouted with each heartbeat, threading their hands together, feeling their presence against her skin, a lifeline. With every ounce of will, their bond unbroken, they barreled through, racing toward the light reforming above. With a final push, the shadows recoiled, torn apart by the brilliance they could no longer bear. In the heart-sinking silence, a blinding flash ignited the dim air, drowning out the cries, and then silence. When the world resolved before them, Sarah staggered into a sunlit field, fresh and bright, vibrant life blossoming around them. Like a new day. She knelt, breathless but alive, her children at her side, tears cascading down their cheeks. Mom! Are we safe? Ben whispered, gaze wide, understanding heartbreak in those innocent eyes. Yes, she croaked, scooping them into her arms. We made it. We're home. They held on to each other like lifeboats in a turbulent sea, grounding themselves in love after the storm. What would have happened if we hadn't resisted? Lily asked. We believed, Sarah said softly, her heart now full, stress and tension melting away. And never give in to that fear. Remember, we break the chains, not each other. As they soaked in the warm sunlight, shadows lingered at the edges, but they no longer held power. They had won together. We escaped, Ben echoed, and she felt the swell of pride. Standing against darkness had forged an unbreakable bond, a truth against every sinister whisper. As they walked away, the haunted farm dimmed behind them, but Sarah knew every dawn would remind them of the darkness they had faced. Mommy? Lily asked, glancing back. Will the shadows be gone forever? With tender resolve, Sarah replied, as long as we carry our light, nothing can take us. In that moment, as they stepped toward healing and into the unknown, they embraced the promise of tomorrow, promise glistening like a second chance. Together, you need to subscribe now to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and let others enjoy this journey. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. Your voice matters. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support for stories that keep you on the edge. Let us watch this community grow.